Hello, this is Mass Inform, and we're going to be going over the three ballot measures that are going to be in the November 2018 election in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We'll be doing a short video series to cover each one. The first one is on the number of patients a nurse can take. Could be interesting.
Yeah. In 2018, Massachusetts is going to have to think about three different ballot questions. The first one has to do with how many patients a nurse can have. If you're going to vote yes in the affirmative, then you're going to vote to impose a limit on the number of patients a nurse can have based upon the role she is doing. If you vote no, you're going to keep it as is and let the market determine. So, just to give you an idea, if you, under this new law, if it's voted in, you can have a maximum of 3 patients for each nurse that is in a step-down or intermediate care unit. You can have 1 patient for each nurse that is under anesthesia. You can have 2 patients for each nurse in post-anesthesia care. There's a whole bunch of categories for this. There's about 20 or 30, and each one of them has its own restriction or consideration to do. So, Guy, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is a little too far for the government to step in. This group is trying to do this. They're a nurse-based advocacy group, and I get it. It's a good idea to have some sort of limitations just for safety and whatnot. But in general, a lot of these things are handled as guidelines. There are a lot of private, groups that do this. Many societies that give certifications to different professionals that say, well, these are the things that we recommend. If you deviate, there could be potential issues, but it's not like it's a law, right? So there are certainly legal structures for many things as well, but they're usually last case scenarios, not to this level, right? I mean, if I'm somebody who, makes homes, I don't want somebody to tell me how many I can make. If I'm making burgers in a burger joint, I don't want somebody telling me how many I can make.
Exactly.
If I make widgets on a manufacturing plant line, we'll figure out what makes sense for us because we know what we're doing. Similarly here, just looking at the one sliver of healthcare with nursing, granted it's a large part, I get it, but it does not cover the full healthcare. It doesn't take into account rooms, beds, doctors, supplies. There's all sorts of things that go into healthcare. They're not even looking at the patient side of it. Could there be a patient that would make that number untenable? Having 5 at a time might be great if the patients are able to handle it. What if the patient is unruly and you need to dedicate a nurse to that because that's just the way it is, right? These kind of things, just having limits like that, just I don't know if it's really useful or not, right? Guidelines I'm okay with, but again, this is really coming down to limits, hard limits. And then you have the potential of, hey, a nurse who can't make 3 at a time, are they going to get penalized for that? I mean, that just seems bogus to me. Like, this is far too detailed for my liking. If there was more about outcomes for patients, I'd be more amenable to looking at it, but my gut reaction is I don't like this. It feels like somebody invading my work. Like I don't work as a nurse, but I wouldn't want somebody telling me how many things I can do at a time. I will figure that out. I will work out. So there might be a week where I just need to do more. There might be a week where I can do less, and it's okay because we're not under the gun, right? So that's my gut reaction to this. There are plenty of potential negatives to this. I mean, how do you feel about it?
So before this happens, the nurses group that actually initiated this, their idea is based around safety, to make sure that there are not too many patients for any one given nurse. And like you said, that's better determined by the hospitals. And the
Yeah.
reason why it's better determined by the hospitals is because they have the liability if something goes wrong. If you're assigning too many patients per nurse and someone does not get the treatment that they need and they sustain further damages, the hospital is going to get sued for that.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why they figure out on their own time, with their own metrics, with their own nurses, how they're going to handle how many number of patients. Now, that said, nurse is not a nurse is not a nurse is not a nurse. Each nurse, like he was saying, each nurse has a different level of productivity that they need to take into account.
Yeah.
This bill has no idea how to handle that. It has nothing to do with the nurses. It has only to do with creating one similar standard across all boards, which doesn't work. Economically speaking, this is actually pretty painful. And with our healthcare, as you go into these hospitals, they determine how many nurses they need, which is how much they're willing to expend at that point. With this, they're going to need more nurses to cover their normal workload. So because of that, it's going to cost more for the hospitals to operate. They're going to charge more, which means their
Yeah.
insurances are going to go up. Not only that, if they only have so many nurses to handle 20 people at a time in an emergency room per se, and all of a sudden 25 show up, they're not going to tell those other 5 to go into the hospital. Those are their clients. Those are the people they make money off of. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, just hang out for a couple hours in
Yeah.
the emergency room. This means all of our waiting times are going to go longer. And when you want to go see a specialist, well, I can only have one anesthesia nurse per patient. So if I have 4 surgeries going on at once, I need to have 4 nurses on at the same time. It creates a problem.
Yeah.
It creates a hindrance in our services, and it creates more cost for the businesses. So our healthcare costs will go up, our wait times will go up, and overall, I think economically this will hurt and possibly close some of our hospitals.
Yeah, and what do you do in emergency situations? I mean, hopefully they'll have some provision for this, but let's say like we had the Boston Marathon bombing, like
Yeah.
do you suddenly turn people away? I mean, like that was a weird situation with lots of patients showing up, and our hospitals did an admirable job of doing everything they could, and a lot of people survived because of our healthcare workers just doing everything they could. Should we put limits on? I mean, that just it's absurd to me. I don't know. It feels wrong to me to have to do this, but I'm all for guidelines. I like guidelines, but once you go too far by making it law that you can only do this much, it's just like that just seems stupid. But maybe there's another way to look at this, and maybe we're just not capturing what the intent was correctly, and we're just wrong. Like that's fine, but
But you know what? You could tell us.
exactly. What do you think?
Down in the comments, let us know what you think about this. Which way are you going to vote? If you vote yes, then you are opting to have nurses limited with the number of patients they're allowed to have. If you want no, then that means you're going to let the market handle it. The hospitals
Yeah.
can determine based upon their own personnel. Let us know in the comments below, and we'll put a link to the actual bill down in the description. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Well, this was a video from Mass Inform. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or would like to support us, please visit us on
Twitter, Facebook, Patreon. Links will all be below in the description. You can also leave us a comment, and if you have something you want us to cover, comment down below as well.
Thanks again. Goodbye.